Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Trash Talk Live. This is episode 32, right? So we've done 32 of these live shows. We endeavored to do them every month, although this one is probably 2 months old, 2 months coming down the pipe. But we're pretty good at keeping on schedule. But our usual guest of ceremonies, Mr. Ian Maverick, is not here. He wanted me to tell everyone that he was racing cars this weekend. So, Mav, don't get hurt racing your cars. He's talked about them a few times here and on the podcast and how he enjoys doing that. I would love to do it too, but my wife would kill me. So yeah, cool for him. It's like we got a small group here today, but that's fine by me. Small is cozy and more intimate, and to me, it's just a bunch of friends talking about TRS-80s, sitting around the campfire or something like that. So start off with go around quickly, and everybody can give an update of what they've been doing in the hobby. Unfortunately for me, it's not a lot. I'm still going to my class. I've got another month left of my EMT class. It takes up all of my time, unfortunately, but it's a pretty rewarding endeavor that I'm doing, and sort of joining my local volunteer ambulance corps and helping out the community. So I feel really good about it. But once that class is over, I'm going to have so much free time. I'm going to be back in the shop and definitely working on my computers back here.
It's amazing, Pete.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'm actually driving the ambulance now, so they actually gave me that responsibility. So I don't take it lightly. You know, you have people's lives in your hands, and not only the patients, but even like, you know, the EMTs that are back there working on the patient. They're usually not seatbelted in, and you're driving to a hospital with, you know, priorities, sometimes lights and sirens, and you really got to be like on the ball, 100% focused, and make sure no one gets hurt. So,
especially with all the idiots out there that don't understand that the sirens and lights mean get the hell out of the way.
Exactly. I've seen those idiots. Yeah, that's me. Eric, why don't you tell us what's going on with you?
Oh, well, most of my time is spent, you know, work and stuff, but I did, you know, pick up a few goodies. I got that Micromint expansion interface, and I got the original RCA TV.
Yes, I saw that.
Oh yeah, that was sweet.
Yeah, so I was thinking, what do I show at Tandy Assembly this year? So I think that's definitely one to at least bring to show. You know, I don't think there's enough to build a whole display around it, but you know, there it is.
Maybe with a Coco or something.
Yeah, something that does composite. I mean, it works. You know, I had fears that when I got there, the tube would be snapped. And of course, we've got a source for tubes. That's not a problem. But I mean, the box was twice as big as I expected. He had it really well packed. So
I think great display would just be that TV and the standard Model 1 monitor side by side. And you'll have so many conversations of people just comparing the differences. I think that could be a table unto
well,
itself.
you know, there's that one Japanese Model 1 monitor that kind of has the angled display that I only saw it one time on a Japan Yahoo auction. But you know, if I could have like all three of the displays with the original monitor, show this is what we had, you know. But I don't know that I'll find one of those before September.
Actually, you have one of the European monitors, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, bring that too and have all three side by side.
Well, I have the European monitor in 220 50 hertz, and then the Japanese version that's 160 hertz. So.
There you go. You gonna bring them all?
I could. You know, it'd be an interesting display.
It definitely would be. You're gonna have at least two tables, right?
Yeah. Although, I mean, I always keep, part of a table for, a friend that might need it. So,
Be a little bit worried about the video on our 60 hertz power.
I've hooked the 50 hertz displays up, and you have to tweak the display to work with a 60 hertz Model 1, but I also have 50 hertz Model 1s that I can hook it up to. And I've got the step up transformer.
Eric has everything.
Apparently.
Also, speaking of Tandy Assembly, I can give an update on that. The show's on schedule. The website is updated. It's ready to be filled in with exhibitors and speakers and presentations and tech talks. So we're about to actively start pursuing those and start really pushing it. We really don't get kicked off on that until the spring. So now it's the spring. So we're going to start filling that in, asking people. We already got a bunch of sponsors coming in, so that's good. The funds in the bank account are strong for Tandy Assembly. So even
That's good.
Even if we have a year or two of weak shows, we're still going to have them. So it's great. We have a little buffer there, but I expect this year, for what I'm hearing at VCF East and Coco, the attendance has been outstanding. So I think people are really excited to get back to meeting people. And, that's half of this hobby is meeting the other people and talking to them and just nerding out on, your favorite computer. So I expect we're going to have really strong attendance this year. George Phillips, what have you been
Hey
up to?
there. I've been up to sort of the usual stuff, noodling around with the emulator and ZMac and fixing some sort of obscure bugs in ZMac and Load 80, which involve the the relative file formats and using absolute segments and sort of strange linking problems that people have been passing on to me. So I don't think I've updated the copy on my website, but the copy, the GitHub repo is up to date. So sort of just polishing off some obscure corners there. And it's kind of the same in the emulator. That I recently noticed a funny bug where if you have the audio filtering turned on, after 6.5 minutes, the MC10 emulation develops a little blip in the audio. It will just blip about every 3 seconds. It kind of varies. And I've tracked down what the problem is, and it's one of those ones where I think I know the answer, but then I'm going to have to dig into it more to make sure that the audio is not going to do this in 6 hours instead of 6 minutes or something like that.
Mm.
So I've been keeping busy with that. I've done some work on updating the information for the TRS 8-bit contest for 2023, which is going out there and writing a tiniest Z80 disassembler you can. And so I'm going to put up some more things there with some test files and explicit examples and probably some information in general about how the Z80 opcodes are organized, because I don't really, want the contest to be sort of, I don't want contestants necessarily spending all their time figuring out how the Z80 works. I'd rather see them, working on actual code instead. So I hope to have that up to date. I think I'll toss a link to the contest page in the chat and on YouTube just so people can see it.
That's pretty hardcore competition.
Yeah, we'll see. I was really impressed with the number of entries I got last year, which I thought was a pretty hardcore thing. So I'm hoping I've had 3 or 4 inquiries, no actual entrants yet, but it's still pretty early. So
Very cool.
Bonus points for the undocumented instructions, or?
So, well, you can always do extra homework, but I decided just to limit it to the documented instructions, just to keep the problem space concrete and not worry about all the weird stuff. But I think I'm going to put information about the instructions on my page anyways, just out of interest.
if the goal is to be small, then doing extra stuff would seem to be self-defeating, I would think.
Yes, it would be self-defeating. On the other hand, if you want to do it and sort of if-def out in your assembler, would certainly please the judges to no end, because there's always that. Get special mention for your hard work.
Well, and then there's always that person who goes the extra mile and makes it smaller than everybody else's too. So
Yeah.
So George,
Yeah,
what are the challenges of writing a good disassembly? On the face of it, you would think, oh, I just translate, the hex code into opcodes. I just do a mapping there. But it's a lot more complicated than that, obviously, to make a good disassembler with understandable and readable code, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're right on the surface of it. For most disassemblers, the pragmatic ones are simply pretty much just a big list of all the possible instructions, and then it was sort of %D kind of things to put the numbers into it. And that's if you want to spend the least amount of time writing a disassembler, that's certainly the approach you should take, I think. And it also, it's easy to make it so you can disassemble, different machine languages and so on. To make a tiny one in this case, that you need to recognize the patterns in the Z80. For example, if you look at the 8-bit register loads, right? You might think, well, there's sort of 8 different registers if you count memory location HL. So there's 64 instructions that will transfer between a register. You can load A with B, or you can load A with C, and so on. And you might think that you need to sort of spell those out. But of course, the Z80 needs to operate efficiently. So if you look at the actual instruction code, you'll see there's 3 bits dedicated to the destination register and 3 bits dedicated to the source register. So there's that sort of pattern there. And if you look at the pattern, it turns out that, that BC, the register numbers go from 0, 1, 2. So it's B, C, D, E, HL, memory location HL, which is follows the same pattern. And then A register is 7. And if you want a bit of really obscure trivia, I was noticing the other day that, of course, this all comes back from the 8080, because the Z80 was basically an improved clone of the 8080, right? So it shares the same internal numbering and stuff to be compatible. And it goes back to the 8008, which is, which was something Intel built. I think it was intended to be used in a terminal, but ultimately didn't get used by the customer. So they released it as a microprocessor. But it also has all your familiar registers, A, B, C, D, E, H, L. But I noticed in the 8008, the numbering internally is different. They actually start A at register 0, then B, C, D, E. And then L is register 6, and register 7 sort of register is memory location HL. So for some reason, between the 8008 and the 8080, they changed that numbering. It really makes you wonder why they did that. But
just to fuck around with people.
that's right. I mean, it was the same company, so yeah, maybe there was somebody on the team who didn't like somebody else.
You know what Bones would say? No engineers, they love to change.
There you go.
So true.
It's true.
George, how are the illegal opcodes expected to be handled? Are those supposed to be detected and you decode them as DBs then?
My rule for it is that you just sort of don't do anything drastic like crash.
DB it is then.
Well, I guess what you'll notice is that for a lot of the illegal or undocumented opcodes, a common one is the IX instructions, because if you look at the IXIY instructions, they're all sort of HL instructions in disguise, except they have a little prefix, either DD or FD in front of them. Well, it turns out that you can have as many DD and FD prefixes as you want, but that's undocumented, so we're not going to bother about that. And if you put a DD and an FD in front of something that isn't an HL instruction, like say load A with B, then ZE goes, okay, I don't care. That's just a long way of saying load A with B, right? And then you get the actual sort of useful undocumented instructions where if you have one of these prefixes, but you're talking about the H or L register, then you'll actually access either the low byte or the high byte of the IX register, which normally you can't do. Normally it's just sort of a 16-bit quantity that's atomic, from the documented point of view. So for the most part, you get a lot of cases like that where it doesn't matter or it's just a NOP or something like that.
Cool. Anything else, George? Working on?
That's been about it, I think. Yeah.
How's that Cocoa emulation coming along?
There's been some work on it.
Top secret, I understand. All right, Peter Phillips, how you doing, bud? What's up?
All right. Things have been fairly busy at work, but I think I missed a meeting, so I'm not sure if this is old news, but now I can share my screen. I got involved with if I can pick out the just do screen one. I don't know if you can see that here.
Yep.
Tim Lindner is working on MAME to improve the Cocoa emulation, and he was having trouble with Marble Maze, which it's like Marble Madness for the Cocoa, and the disk was copy protected, and he has a proper image of it, and it didn't quite work. And although he'd kind of figured out where it was going wrong. So I did get TRS-80 GP. I fixed up a couple of little problems, and we had to add a few undocumented instructions, which the bootloader used. But it came down to there's really two problems. And in the short version of the story is that I think the MAME guys understood it, but didn't have time to fix it. So I ended up posting a fix and arguing that the fix was the right thing to do in one case. What it comes down to, if you can see the picture here, is the copy protection code used read track, and read track does kind of unaligned read of the data mostly. What it does is it reads the data until it sees a mark byte. And when it sees a mark byte, it will align. Now, when it was using low density to do this, which the color computer supports. And when you're in low density, the mark byte is literally 1 byte. It's not a prefix like in FM. So you run into a problem. And now our emulator doesn't have this problem because it's either perfectly aligned or it'll look ahead. But if you imagine you've got this sequence of bits on the disk, and parenthetically, there are clock bits here, so I've left them out because it just complicates things, but it's the same problem. So what happens is that there was a DRQ, meaning that a byte was ready, then another 8 bits come along, it does a DRQ, and you've got a 0 that comes out. Another one comes along, and you've got a DRQ, another 0 comes out. And finally, you get to this point where you've read the start of a header block, an FB, and you get a DRQ and an FB comes out. And in this case, this is if everything lines up perfectly, which is not guaranteed to happen because you can drop a bit or something along the way. So the problem that comes up is like, what happens if you're behind by a little bit? So this may have been zeros or something, but this time you'll see a 0 coming along, but you'll get 4 bits deep into the marker, and that will get omitted as a 0F. And then it will go 4 more bits down, and then it'll have to fire off another DRQ right away because it's seen the marker now. If you look back in time, we're lined up, that we've actually hit the mark point. So we've got to emit a DRQ to spit the FB out. And that's fine. But the problem is that the drive is kind of fast. So what happens if you were only 1 bit behind perfect alignment? Then what happens is you see a 0. Now we go 7 bits into the mark and we see a 7D, if I got that right. And then on the very next bit, so there'll be a DRQ here, and we'll get a 7D come out. Then in 1 more bit time ahead, you'll get the marker bit. And so we'll have to do a DRQ and it'll emit the FB. But the problem with this is timing, is that this is like 1 bit is about 8 microseconds or something, which maybe is too fast to expect the chip to reasonably respond. Well, I think that the people behind this knew what the answer was, but hadn't coded it up that way. That, in fact, if I could illustrate it here, what the chip actually does is it has a window that's more like this, that 3 bits ahead of the marker, and then 5 bits into it. And it actually doesn't care about these because it's outside of its viewpoint at that point. When it sees this pattern, then it realizes that it's hit a marking pattern, and that in, I guess, 3-bit times, because we're looking 3 bits ahead, then we're going to emit the DRQ. And now that gives you 3-bit times about 24 microseconds, and it's enough. And putting that fix in, then the read track works and the copy protection routine goes ahead. I think the one thing I learned about this, which is maybe something that is known, is that for the FM markers, you have to have a certain number of leading zeros. I think it's 3, but what the chip does, I think a lot of implementations will say that you probably need to have a full byte there just to be safe. So with that timing fixed up, then MAME could almost load things, except it would successfully read the tracks and then hang at some point. And that problem came back to the data request. Normally when you read a track, you issue a read track, you go through the whole track and the command ends normally. But since it's copy protection, they only want to read a little bit of the header, the first, I don't know, quarter of the track or something, because they're looking for a magic marker. And then they tell the command to quit. And this is where I got into a bit of a debate, but for reasons I don't understand, in the MAME code, when you tell the disk controller is told to cancel the command, it clears the DRQ, because I think they thought that, well, it resets the chip. But the problem is that on the color computer and on the Model 3, usually you go into a mode where if there is no DRQ, the chip is halted so that you can keep up with the data stream. So that means that as soon as the copy protection told the read track to stop, then the DRQ went to 0, the processor halted, and the Coco just was left hanging forever. But fortunately, Tim pointed out that this is what the original code did, so it must work in practice. So they put the change in, I guess, somewhat reluctantly. Now, the only thing is, I wish that there was, I haven't seen much copy protected color computer stuff, because I think generally they cracked everything and turned them into regular disk images. But it's kind of interesting to see this in action. It's probably a little more sophisticated than what some of the Model 3 and Model 1 things do, but it's interesting to see. So yeah, that was like as a rabbit hole that I went down. But it picks up super utility. Super utility 1 ran into a variation of this problem, which is also fixed. So yay.
That's definitely a rabbit hole that you would have thought was lost to the sands of time. But you were able to decipher it. That's pretty cool work, man.
It is very cool.
So Peter, which is the floppy disk controller that the Coco uses? Is it the 1793?
Pretty much, yeah. Although I think that they might have switched to the 1770. I'm not sure the number, but I think they do use it. There's a different model that uses a different chip, but it's basically the 1793.
Isn't it the case that even though all the chips are software compatible, that there are slight timing differences depending on the chip?
Yeah, the documentation even says that the amount of delay that you have to wait between issuing commands is a little bit different. But I think that they're more similar than not. I think that, once Western Digital got, an FM, MFM chip, they just tweak things. And there's I think the main person who wrote the current version, Olivier Galabert, he has a kind of a somewhat decapped version of the chip, but it's a 1772, and I don't know how similar it is to this one. It must be pretty close.
But those controller chips are sort of funny, right? Because I guess when you think of a chip, you think of, something that's just sort of random logic, but those are really just kind of their own little microcontrollers and have firmware in them that actually runs them. That's why you have those command delays, as I understand it, right? Because you send the command and there's going to be a little bit of time before the firmware runs its loop and looks and goes, oh, there's something for me to do, right?
That's something that, more trivia, that the main implementation claims that you can write a command at any time, and it doesn't matter if the chip is busy or not, it will accept that command. The documentation says no, but that's the way they did it, and it seems to function.
So when a read track command is issued, I've never used read track when I've tried direct floppy disk control access. Never really had any need to, right? Normally just read sector. It's issuing a DRQ after every byte is read, and not just when the command terminates.
Yeah, the command, you issue it, and then you'll get the first byte after an index pulse, and then it will keep going, and for, I guess, FM is like 3,000-ish bytes, and then until there's an index pulse, and then the command will go to not busy again. But along the way, you'll be getting whatever alignment, and then if it sees a mark byte, it will align itself for a while. So you'll kind of see the IDAM and DAM headers and the data on the disk, more or less. And the one feature of the Model 1 1771 chip is that you can tell it to do a read track and not synchronize with the marks. I don't think TRS-80 GP implements that, or anybody implements that, because I don't know what it'd almost be like a diagnostic or something, because you just get this stream of data that you probably couldn't interpret anyways.
Well, I guess that makes it analogous to the write track command that's used for formatting. So obviously a DRQ has to be issued every time it's ready for a byte.
Yeah, the difference is with the write track. The write track has to interpret some of the bytes, like some of them need, to write the CRC, but at least it's in charge of the alignment, so it doesn't have to worry about timing. It will basically be every 32 or 64 microseconds. It's a read track where it's tricky. And TRS-80 GP cheats, by the way, that when it has a flux-like image, it actually looks ahead as far as it can and says, oh, there's a marker coming up. It's like, well, we'll just jump ahead a little bit in time and ignore the details. It cheats a fair bit. It's quite synchronous on the timing compared to a real chip. But even the flux guys like MAME, they literally have a phase locked loop in there. they still don't emulate the kind of jitter that comes out of a motor, which I think is fairly substantial. So it's a deep kind of analog hole, really.
Very cool. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peter. John Elliott, you are all dolled up today in your Radio Shack gear. What's going on?
Well, for way too long, I've been working on Xenix 3.4. And I am very happy to report here for the first time that is now available for download. Let me post
Yay.
a link for let's see. That will take you to the Tandy Emeritus directory for Xenix 3.4, and you can download an upgrade disk. It's got a zip file with release notes and installation instructions. A couple of you here have already seen most of what's in there, but yeah, it's ready to go.
A new version of Tandy Xenix. How many years later?
Right?
By the original engineer who worked on the operating system. What an amazing story.
Yeah, it was alternating parts fun and frustrating. So,
Sure.
there were times, but no, yeah, we finally had our beta testers sign off. There were some things I had to fix, things I overlooked, or just kind of general things to do, and one really weird workaround, but yeah, it's ready. So I'm sure people will break it more. But yeah, it's good to kick this out the door.
How do you think Microsoft will feel about this?
How
Microsoft will feel.
they'll be like, Xenix, what's that?
What's
I
that?
think there's like maybe 3 people left at Microsoft who know what Xenix is. I got to actually go talk to Jerry Denietz at Microsoft. They were having a big anniversary party for him. He's been there 40 years or whatever it is, and we reminisced a little bit. He said working on the Xenix port to Tandy, he said, was just one of the most amazing things and the shortest amount of time he's like ever done. He said, he was up like 48 hours straight or something like that, right before they sent the image down to Texas for people to. It was fun getting to talk to him.
Well, they got that out the door in record time in order to get the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was insane. We had, those of us that were still working on UNOS had no clue what shenanigans, was going on over there in Tower 1. But yeah, and here we are.
Congratulations.
And to everyone that gets to play with it, I hope.
Definitely.
And John, are you still using George's assembler to do all your coding or all your assembling?
What, for Xenix? No, I'm using Xenix itself. Xenix is built with Xenix.
Oh, I'm sorry, I confused. I remember you were talking about using George's software, but it was his emulator that you were using, right? Not the assembler.
Yeah, no, I'm using his emulator. I did use ZMac for our modern memory tester that's Z80 based. ZMac was invaluable for that. It was awesome. I wholeheartedly recommend ZMac for anybody that needs to do modern Z80 work. It made a lot of things easy, especially testing with TRS-80 GP. But yeah.
Are you also customizing the Z80 control?
No. Xenix 3.4 is coming with the very last version that Frank did. And I kind of felt like, you know, a little tip of the hat to him that, you know, we might sometime down the road think about, you know, doing things with Z80 control, but I wanted the initial 3.4 release to have his final, the last one that he did in there. So
That's cool. Was that an unreleased version or?
I don't believe it was ever released.
Yeah.
He kind of tuned some things up and, you know, a couple little bug fixes. Bobby could probably tell you a little bit more about
I'm
what
sure.
all. I didn't really sit down and do an analysis of the you know, Frank did his documentation really well, but I was more focused on the 68K stuff. So
Mhm.
that's what we did. If folks are interested, I can go over the release notes if you want, or I don't know what
Yeah, you
how
can
we're
give-
doing for time, or
You can give us some highlights. That'd be cool.
all righty. I gotta figure out how to do that. Let's see. Oh, there's a big share screen button. All right. All right. No. There we go. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna open this up. So this is the final set of release notes that goes out with the list. Right in here is where we talk about, okay, what's the new stuff that we get. One of the biggest features in the kernel is the automatic detection of MMU size. The kernel now, when it boots, does a series of assembly language tests, and it's like, oh, I see what size MMU you have. You know, you have a new one, you have the stock one, whatever, right? It figures out how many bits of MMU you have, and then it will automatically end user space at the limit of what the MMU can address, which gets rid of the whole weird thing that you had to do when you had too much memory that the MMU couldn't use, and where you had to make a gap in your memory. So you'd like have a megabyte and then you'd skip a meg and then add the rest for RAM disk. You don't have to do that anymore. Xenix is smart enough to go, oh, okay, I see where your MMU ends. I see how much memory you have. I'll take care of all that. So no weird hardware shenanigans with having too much memory, especially if you don't have an MMU extender. Obviously, it supports all the new XMMU, MMU3 from Tandy Emeritus, all of that stuff. This was just something fun that I threw in. It has a crash beep, so if the kernel halts for any reason, you can use CFG to tell it to beep when it does, so that you can just hear, if your system crashes or halts itself. Another really neat thing, because Xenix knows how much memory that users can use in your system, if there's any leftovers, it takes any kernel data structures that can be reallocated and moves them outside of that memory, which maximizes your amount of user memory that you have, which is really cool. So all the CFG-able stuff gets pushed out below what the MMU can address, which maximizes your user memory, which is pretty cool. It's most useful for systems that don't have an MMU extender. So all you get for running user programs is up to 1 meg. So then CFG pushes all of its buffers down below that 1 meg. Let's say you have 3 meg of memory in your system. Then it just pushes all the extra buffer stuff down up above 1 meg. One thing that I'm super happy about is the real-time clock driver. It was really fun working with George. Thank you, George. It really was a blast. Getting the TRS-80 GP running just as a prototype for what we'd eventually do with the Dallas Semiconductor chip. But having the TRS-80 GP version of it allowed me to do some interesting things, such that because of the way George and I implemented the emulators real-time clock, you can now run TRS-80 GP in turbo or haste mode, and Xenix will not gain time. The time will stay constant, even if you accelerated. So like when I'm doing development, I just leave turbo on all the time now, running Xenix 3.4, and the clock doesn't, run off into the future. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So, with the RTC, we get some new features. You have, dev RTC, and then HW clock, which allows querying and setting the real-time clock. There's some random bug fixes and other things that just, allow support, but that's the lion's share of what's in the release.
Cool. So are you building the kernel in TRS-80 GP?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, there's only one thing that doesn't work right in TRS-80 GP, and the only time I tripped up over it was in the new diagnostic program. There's a 68K based diagnostic that basically runs like the kernel, but it lets you test the full range of the MMUs, because using 68K code is the only way you can test MMUs. So now there's installed in the root of 3.4, there's M68K diags and M68010 diags. And you pick which one based on which chip you have installed on your CPU board. And running that will run a diag program that will auto detect your MMU size and allow you to do a full test of your MMU, which wasn't possible with the Tandy diagnostics, because they always stopped at 1 meg, assuming that that's all you had. They never updated their diagnostic programs for the MMU extender. So now we have that.
Sweet.
Eventually, I'll add the interrupt test support to that, but for right now, it just says, nope, I don't do that yet.
Did you ever wonder if if Frank was still alive, if he would be collaborating with you on this, or what do you think he would do?
I don't know. Frank and I drifted out of touch, and he kind of, I don't know, felt like he was kind of off doing his own thing, and I kind of lost interest in all the old retro stuff for quite a while, until I heard from this Pete guy who found a machine that might be mine. Like, what?
Yeah,
that was something else.
It's ironic in a way that none of this would have happened if Frank probably didn't pass away, right? It would all still be in his house.
Well, right. I mean, who knows where my machine would have ended up, right? And I mean, you might have still ended up, after you did the rescue, right? It's like, who's this IV guy? And figured it all out from all the excavations, right? But
I'm sure Bobby had something to do with that.
yeah, I'm sure he did. But yeah, no, it's been kind of fun, It was interesting trying to get everything. The first thing that I had to do for just to even have a chance for making a 3.4 was figure out how to build the kernel again. There were some critical pieces missing, and I had to remember in my brain, all right, how did this stuff work before? And I basically had to rewrite it.
Mm-hmm.
And once I added the missing pieces in, of course, Bobby flipped. It's like, what? You got it working? So yeah, and then we were able to go from there, right? Just keep everything checked in RCS, and
Yeah.
Did you just say RCS?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even CBS, man. We didn't. It was out, but we didn't use it at Tandy.
I have advanced to CVS myself.
No, we had the doc. I believe we downloaded the source and built it, but we never ended up using it. And but by the time, like for example, I ended up at SCO, we were using other things there. So I never went to use CBS to, it was the run on top of RCS stuff, right?
Yeah, it's really complicated.
Just last week, I ran across code I had in RCS.
Well, all of Xenix is.
I was very pleased that on my Linux box, I did install RCS and it still loaded it. So
I said, okay. Yeah, I had to, for this, I had to actually go find wherever it was that we ported it. I can't remember if I had to rebuild it or not, but we obviously had RCS running on Xenix for a long time. So
Cool. Well, I look forward to your speaker presentation submission, John, for attending the assembly.
Unfortunately, I may not make it to TA this year. My son moved, and he moved from Washington to Arkansas, and it was a road trip, right? It was basically he and his wife threw all their stuff in the truck, in a moving truck, and I was his truck co-pilot. So we had this very, very, very long road trip down there, and I burned most of my vacation. So yeah. Well, I'll be sad if I don't get to go, but we'll see. When we're getting ready to flip over, let's see, that'll be what? I think my contract ends in June, and they're already working on the renewal. So when we flip over to the new contract, it may be possible for them to, let me go negative on my my vacation balance. I'll have to see what where the balances are once I get there. But right now, it's not looking great.
All right. Well, we can cross our fingers. All right. Thanks, John. Hey, Quentin Barnes. What have you been up to, man?
Well, a bunch of miscellaneous things. By the way, the Matthew Reed's Tris Read and Tris Write, I got that to work under Wine, the Windows emulator on Linux. So if anyone ever wants to play with it, but has Linux and sees that it's Windows, it's like, well, it will work under Wine. So, and if you need any pointers to how to configure Wine to get it to work, let me know. And I'll send you some aliases for them. Several exciting things I'll share. One of them was my first programming gig for actual money I got when I was a sophomore in college. It was for a company called Rhino Robots, and it was writing their demo software for their Rhino robots on the TRS-80 Model 3. And for 40 years, that was in 1983. The software I had written had been lost. I didn't know what happened to it. I'd found some backup disks that had earlier versions and such, but I couldn't find the final stuff. And I was going through a stack of my floppies, and I found one that had a handwritten label on it that had half been ripped off, and it wasn't in my writing. It was in a stack I'd always ignored because it wasn't my disk. It wasn't my writing. Well, I finally got around to loading it. It was the disk. I don't know how it ended up on this floppy with somebody else's writing and half ripped off. My guess was maybe I made it at the end and they just had a floppy laying around and gave it to me. Here, make a copy of your software or something. Right. Best I could figure. But I got it all recovered, it all read, and I put it on GitHub for fun. And so I'll share that link.
Yeah, what are Rhino robots?
Well, they're a company was. I can also show you the link for the robot itself. It was the XR1. It was a company that made educational robots. They weren't toys in any sense. They cost, if you find their ads in the TRS-80 magazines and Apple and such, it was a robot for training people. It it was something that's not commercial grade, but it was several $1,000s a piece. They had with their controller and the robot itself. They were about about a little under 3 feet tall, I think, in reach, and they had like 9 degrees of freedom and such. And I was hired to port their Apple II software to the TRS-80, and their Apple II software was complete junk and full of bugs. And I redesigned the whole thing while porting it, which was rewriting it from scratch basically. And so it's pretty much half assembly, half basic. And
So they're unlikely to take over the earth anytime soon.
right. No Arnie found in those robots. But they were kind of fun. And in that repo, I have a thing called the job markdown script that describes my experience with that jobs. And my first, like I said, first paid programming gig, and it was a lot of lessons learned in many ways. So just wanted to share that with the group so you can see my first assembly Z80 assembly code I wrote and published, at least theoretically. There was a whole bunch of things at that job. I got fired and rehired 7 times in one day, for example.
Okay.
Crazy stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. And by the way, being hardware people, they love to blame the software. They kept blaming my software for everything. It turned out my software was completely innocent. It was their hardware, or the way.
Yeah, bull crap.
Yeah.
Says the hardware guy.
Yeah. Well, that's where I learned about how you can have anomalies and such. Hardware people don't like admitting about bugs. They don't have bugs, they have anomalies. Well, while I was recovering that software, I was also working on some utilities. So I wrote a couple of utilities and put those also on GitHub in this repo that I'll put in the thing. I wrote 2 of them. One was an editor assembler file format converter, because I wanted to recover my assembly files, and I learned about various assemblers out there and how they tended to change their format over time. And I found bugs on Ira's site about the formats and what they were supposed to be and such. And I need to work with Ira to get those fixed up to be more accurate. But I wrote that that little utility. But then on recovering some CMD files and talking with Ira pointed out that CMD files are what he called it was slack, is that because various DOSes we work with don't always respect end of file, you can end up with garbage at the end that just happens to be left over in memory when it was written out, or on the format on the floppy when it was written out. And this causes problems for Ira, because different people will have in their CMD files different random garbage after the end of file.
Mm.
Is it the same file?
Yeah, even though it's the exact same file, because the way the CMD file is encoded, it will have exactly the same contents as far as the OS is concerned, but these random bytes of garbage at the end. So I wrote a strip CMD command, which will strip a CMD and throw away all that stuff going through the format. And
it's not just end of file. If you try to compile something or assemble something in MRAS, the Mesosys assembler, if you have a tab in there, it chokes on it. It hates it. Just a tab.
Oh, well, this is the CMD file itself, the binary, not the EDSAM
Not
file.
the stars.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I wrote this utility to fish it out and clean up those and snip off anything that's left over in the file and create a new file on the contents. So I still don't have either one of those tools far enough along to go and build all the different binaries for all the different host OSs. So if somebody wants something early that to run on Windows or MS-DOS for that stuff, let me know and I'll build you a version of it for it. But eventually,
I'm sure you're going to be Ira's hero,
Yeah, yeah, because he kept talking about slack bites, slack. What the hell are slack bites? I finally got out of him. Oh, that's the stuff left over at the end
It
of
makes
the.
it hard to do file compares, right? So-
Yes, that was his complaint. So the reason why that this also came up is I think I brought this up on the group several times here. Back 30 years ago, almost exactly 30 years ago, I was sort of given the corporate archive of Cornsoft by the
Wow.
when I went to go pick up he was giving away his TRS-80s. That's Charles Guy. He was shutting down his business in 93, and he was giving away his TRS-80s, and a friend of mine hooked me up to him, and he also gave me he brought out his what was essentially all of his work diskettes and tapes. I got 41 cassette tapes and 27 floppies filled with software. And I've been sorting through it over the years, trying to figure out what's all on them and what matters, and trying to put it in some sort of organization. Well, last week, what?
Source?
Yeah, some of it's source. Which the early stuff is, well, I haven't gone through the cassettes much, but the early stuff doesn't seem to have any source anymore. The later stuff does have source, but I'm still trying to, with 41 cassettes and 27 floppies, there's a lot of stuff there to sort through, and it's all mixed together. He's got all sorts of personal stuff. He's got stuff for the Coco. He's got Model 3, Model 1. He's got a little bit of everything, and I'm trying to figure out the formats and what can be recovered off of them and such. But one of the things I did this last week was I ran across an unreleased Cornsoft game, which, as far as I know,
No way.
it's
Ooh.
Ira doesn't
Okay.
know about it, and I can find no mention of it anywhere on the web. So I figured I could post it here for you guys if you want.
Yes.
No, we don't want
Share
that at
your
all.
screen and
Please do.
show and tell.
Okay, so it's called Flip Out. It's there were several other games around like it. It's one of those where you put little markers on a board, and I think it's like I forget what the game where you flip
Othello?
Othello. Yes, I think it's like that. And I suspect there were other competitors out there, and they figured it was not worthy to bother publishing, and so they never got around to publishing it. That's my guess. That's my speculation. So I'll post. I'll post the CMD and the and a DMK I put together to run it for you. Let's see if I can figure out if I can do this in the channel.
To run under Model 1, Model 3.
It runs under, I think it's targeted at the Model 3. That's why I put together the DMK for. Oh, this is okay. TRS-80.
No battle tanks or anything.
No, not yet. I've only made it through maybe about a quarter or a third of the discs. I don't know what's all there yet. Let's see. Trying to figure out how this sorts. There we go.
Yeah, well, it'll be a great contribution.
Okay, let's do.
Unreleased game. That's just amazing.
Let's see. How does this let me? Does this let me do it? Okay, there you go.
Yep, see it.
You got the a DMK. Yeah, just run it in Model 3 emulation on TRS-80 GP. I even got it set up with an auto command to go ahead and start it. And
Show
there's
us.
Hey, give us a demo, Kenny.
Yeah.
oh well, I suppose. Let's go. I'm not sure how well this will. I haven't done screen sharing. Let's see. Screen share. Hello. Okay. Let's see. There we go. Let's see if this works.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Wahoo.
It's got too many windows laying around. There you go. Like I said, as far as I know, this is completely unpublished.
Never seen it.
Yeah. And if Ira hasn't seen it or heard of it, then I suspect it is unpublished. So you can go, I finally played a game, so it looks like this. And you can do, I'll go first and make a move. Let's see. I can go like C4 or something. Boom. And then it'll flip them over like that.
Yeah, reversing.
Yeah, and then D3. Oops.
Which is the non-trademarked name of.
So there you go. You can go through and play it out. It's apparently all written in assembly, so you don't need basic or anything. It just starts up, and then you have to reset it to get out.
It's kind of like Roundup without the cats.
Very
Sorry,
cool.
sorry, Pete.
And
That is very cool. Yeah, actually, one of the things that when I posted the invitation for this session of Trash Talk, I asked people to maybe present your favorite game, and we do some gameplay. So that's kind of that kind of falls in line with what we're looking for. So anybody else here is on the call, and we can after we go through everybody, we can kind of everybody can.
I thought maybe you
Much
were
of
saving
everything.
it for, after what's new.
Yeah,
or
we'll do it after. But John, you got a Xenix game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, so we'll do some of
so my last bit, I was just going to add that on the archive, I know I've got all the source for Crazy Painter, but it's for the Coco, and TRS-80 GP doesn't do Coco yet. So I've never been able to play with it or test it or anything. So I've got four of the 27 diskettes are all Crazy Painter work for the Coco.
Cool. There's some Coco emulators out there. Pretty good.
Yeah,
ones.
I just haven't bothered. I've bothered to learn TRS-80 GP, and it's pretty nice. And so I'm just hoping it'll show up there eventually.
You're just waiting for the best.
Yeah.
The one I tend to go with is Meme, M-E-M-E. It emulates a bunch of different vintage computers and does it well.
The other thing is I only use Linux, and most all the emulators I found expect you to be running Windows.
Yeah, MAME will work quite nicely on Linux, as
Oh,
will
okay.
XROAR. So
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Doesn't
the one I've used is
TRS-80
XROAR.
GP also run under Linux?
Oh yeah, that's only
Does.
where I use it.
XROAR is pretty easy to get up and going if you want to give that one a spin. Cool. Thank you, Quentin.
Oh, one thing there about the archiving is I think it's really good to curate stuff and boil down what you have and get canonical versions of things. But it's sort of like the graffiti on the walls in Pompeii. It's really good to save all the rest of the stuff because there can be really fascinating stuff hiding in the crevices.
Yes. Oh yeah, that's one of the things with the cassette tapes is there's a bunch of fragments that got overwritten, and I'm trying to use. That's how I got hooked up with Lawrence, was over recovering those tapes with his tape utilities, and I want to see what's on the fragments that I still haven't been able to recover yet, if there anything interesting in those pieces.
Yeah, and Ira is really good at that kind of thing. He keeps every version of everything and archives it.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Quentin. Dusty, my man. God save the king.
Yeah, we've been up since 6 o'clock watching the coronation this morning, or rather yesterday morning. We've had a tremendous day, really, if you're into that sort of pomp and all the what's it's. But yeah, we're just starting to think and work on the June TRS-8 bit. We've got quite a few exciting bits. I'm not going to give you too much because it'll spoil it, but I'll just say thanks to George for the help. One of the really fabulous things we've got on the Aculab floppy tape part of the emulator, which you all know I go on about boringly, but we've now got level 2.5, or actually it's a reduced level 2.5 just to save space. A guy in Australia wrote for 80 micro enhancements to basic level 2, and with George's help we've got it down to the 3 most important options. The other 3 are no have been superseded because of TRS-80 GP. So if you want to do a read number or you want to do a merge, it's just a matter of pasting and copying, and off you go, no problem at all. But that's been the greatest excitement for me anyway over the last 3 months. But yeah, we've got stuff coming in. If anybody has anything to send in, if you get it to me by the end of May, that would help. But as I say, it's just great.
Well, thank you for keeping on with that. Just a bit.
Oh, it's just so fascinating. I mean, just listen to Xenix, but a guy who wrote it, 3.4. You know, I mean, it's just unbelievable, really, isn't it? Yeah, it's fabulous. Yeah.
I'm sure you'd be very happy if we found, like the inventor of the Aculab.
Oh, yeah, the guy, Alan Pound, he runs the existing firm called Aculab, and it's a multi-million-pound international firm of communications equipment. It's unbelievable. They've got a huge, great big office block and premises in Milton Keynes, smack in the centre of England, literally, physically, and they've absolutely nothing left, nothing at all. And I managed to find another Aculab, which I let him have, and just so he sort of put it in a display case with all this modern equipment. And they're I just imagine tucked away in the corner is a tiny little black box, you know.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Mine are still under repairs with Shane. He's going to test them all. We found out a circuit diagram from the Exatron, and the two are very, very similar hardware. So Shane's going to go through that and just to see, making sure that the thing's actually working right. But as I say, I don't think we're ever going to get a read off the wafers. They're just too far gone, you know. But there we go. Yeah.
You might have talked about this before, but just what is the difference between the Exatron and the Aculab? You mentioned they're very similar architectures. Were they developed together? Or?
It's as I mean, I've never had a stringy floppy, so I'm talking. Guess what? I've seen one, but I've never actually had one running. But as I read through what I actually did see, the main difference is the software. The hardware, it uses identical tapes, and if you look inside, the motor that actually drives the wafers is the same one. And I think what the guys were doing was just imported from the States and sticking them in an Aculab box. But of course, they had their own, they had the Aculab ROM in it as opposed to the other one. And Aculab then went one stage further. They did a tremendous enhanced basic. And again, I had taped with it on, but there's no way they're going to give it up. Just like there was Electric Pencil and Scripsit and Zen, the editor assembler, and I think Laurie Shields worked on a slightly reduced version of VisiCalc, which was, again, in the day it was absolutely wonderful. But of course now you look at Excel and you think, crikey, how on earth have we ever managed? But of course, in 1981, having a cassette moving up to a floppy wafer-based system was a leap of technology. It was astounding at the time. Yeah, brings back lots of happy memories.
Well, the limited use that I use Excel for, keeping track of my bookkeeping and whatnot, I could do most of it with VisiCalc still. I don't use anything fancy, So.
Yeah, I mean, it really isn't much more advanced than it was back then. It's a spreadsheet. I mean, what can you do? It's numbers in a grid.
Yeah, that's just how we found. I mean, I one of my tasks, I keep scores for our local shooting leagues, and again, basically, you've just got 15 people having 10 sessions of shooting. It's just a matter of scoring up. You need the average, the best 5 of the last 6. again, it could be done on the same on physical. It's just that the response time else with the modern equipment, and that was always a problem. Not only was it the media, disk drives and cassette were liable to create problems. In the UK, to be honest, one of the biggest problems was the electric supply. You'd get a blip, and then the whole system would reboot. And that's not so bad if you're on discs, if it hasn't done any damage to the disc. But if you're on cassettes and you've got a 4.5 minute reload of the program, it used to get a bit wary.
Oh man, go ahead, George.
Oh, one big difference between the stringy floppy and the AccuLab is that the AccuLab actually implements kind of a block-based file system on the tape. So it has an actual directory you can do, which I don't know if the stringy floppy did or not. And you can just simply save and load files and it will, kind of manage things for you. Whereas with the stringy floppy, it was much more primitive and it really was kind of like a tape drive in the sense that when you saved a file, it was kind of in a slot. Now, if it was at the end of the tape, that's fine. And so if you saved over and it was longer, that's okay. But if you wanted to save over a file and it was in the middle of the tape and it was, bigger than the current slot, you'd have to be very careful with that. So it's the firmware in that sense is much more sophisticated and usable, I would say.
Yeah, that was it. Was more like a disk system because you could save files with a file name, and you got a BAS extension or a CMD extension, so you could just do a list, the equivalent of a directory, and you could see then, oh, that's a basic file, or that's a CMD file, or that's a list file, or a pencil file, that sort of thing. Yeah, it was very clever. And I say, and then XBAS came along, and then there was, I think, just about every disk command, all the programs or the parts of assembler to convert numbers, integers, single or double precisions into strings, and then actually writing stuff to the tapes. Again, we did away without all the poking. It was just a set, just like you used to do in discs. But as I say, unfortunately, I had 2 wafers with a copy of XBAS on, and both of them were what we call new blue tapes, and there was just no way that you could actually see the oxide shedding off. There was no way you'd ever get those to read. Yeah. So anyway, we're building up. We've got, I'll just give you a little bit. We've got the AND ability for hex calculations in level 2 basic. We've got defined functions in level 2 basic. And we've got defined users 0 to 9 in level 2 basic. Working on in string at the minute. If anybody comes up with some clever ideas, get that in, and 1 or 2 others. But it's basically it's just to get it into 16 to run on a level 2 16K machine. But of course, with TRS-80 GP, 48K is brilliant because it's already there. You just have to alter your little command file when you set it off and change 16 to 48, and you've actually got a full-blown system. But yeah, no, it's brilliant. Thanks for your help, George. Anyway, that was super. Much appreciated, man.
All right. Thank you, Dusty. That's why, just talking with Dusty here, this is why I love this community so much, because everybody does their own little thing to keep the history of this computer alive. It's just so much fun. Thanks for that, Dusty. Blair Robbins, how you been?
Hey there, Pete. Everything's all right, thank you. Hope everybody's doing well. I don't have a lot new to report. I did purchase a used Fred, but I have not had time to actually get it up and running and installed. I'm sure I'm going to run into all kinds of complications when I finally get around to it, and I'll have a lot of questions for people in the community to help out. The one thing I played with a little bit is I downloaded PC4, which was an early Model 4 emulator that ran under MS-DOS. I've just been kind of playing around with it a little bit and trying to get my Model 4 programs, assembly language programs, to run on it. And there are some incompatibilities between some of the system calls, the supervisor calls from TRS-DOS or LS-DOS, and then the way they're implemented. The way PC4 worked, if anybody is hasn't heard of it or not familiar with it,
Mhm.
is it kind of works like DOSBox. It didn't emulate the hardware of the Model 4, but it was more of an operating system emulation. And so that's been a little fun and interesting just to see what some of the differences are. Sometimes it's as minor as just, you know, having to save a register pair, you know, prior to calling a supervisor call that TRS-DOS or LS-DOS would save, but PC4 didn't. Some of them were more complicated, but that's really the only software thing I've been playing with.
So was PC4 released back in the day as when TRS-DOS was still a real thing?
Yes, yeah. PC4 was released in the I'd have to look it up to see precisely when it was, but I believe it was early 90s. It was touted as being the very first Model 4 emulator that would run under MS-DOS. And of course, it was a commercial product.
Mhm.
It's just the fact that it was more of a software or an operating system emulation versus a hardware emulation is what I thought was intriguing, and I thought it'd be interesting to look at it. This would have run back in the original IBM PC that was running at 4.5 megahertz. And I understand that back in those days, the emulation was quite slow. For example, you talked about VisiCalc, and VisiCalc ran like a snail on that thing, although it did run. But of course, on modern systems, it runs extremely fast.
Right. Cool. All right. Thank you, Blair. Bartlett Labs, Mr. Peter Bartlett. How are things?
Mr. Bartlett has nothing to report, just here to lend support to everybody else.
You still living in Colorado?
For the time being, yes.
Okay. I thought you were
I
thinking
love it
about
here.
moving, right?
I absolutely love it here, but
Mhm.
it's a long story.
Okay. Take care of those rabbits.
I love them.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Patrick Bureau, what's going on in the shop?
Nothing.
Okay.
It's the last delivery of the mass quantities of Model 3s, 4s, and Model 2s, disk drive bays, and all the other jazz. I've been the last 3 weeks. I've been gone to Minnesota for training, 4 days in, 2 days off. So it's been a lot of taking planes back and forth and just no time to do anything. I talked to Eric over chats for a few things. I'm tossing the idea of selling some K-Pros that I've got lying around. That's about it. I have not had time to touch anything in the last month.
I got rid of all my K-Pros a year or two ago.
Any K-Pro 10s?
Yeah, I got a K-Tail print, a 10 and a 4.
Yeah, the WD-1010 controller in the K-Pro 10 can be hooked to a Model 1, and you can run IDE drives off of it.
You can also plug what I'd also discovered, somebody that made one of us actually, forget who made it, I could look it up, made an adapter for the Fred to be able to run on the K-Pro.
Yeah, well, I don't do Freds.
So it works both ways, I guess.
So, Patrick, when are you going to start the floppy drive repair business?
I knew you were going to ask that. I should never say anything. I should hide.
No, Patrick, you have your price list ready. 1 million per drive, right? I mean, there's going to be somebody out there that's going to be that desperate, right?
The thing is that floppy disk repair is in itself an uncomplicated matter. But if somebody sends you a drive and it's not just an alignment, but the heads are just blown and stuff, they may say, well, change the heads, but there are no spare parts. Really, all I may have is an old head that may work for, X amount of undefined time. I could just what do? I just do all the work and return it for free. You know, and if you repair something and somebody's not happy, you've got all these laws now, client satisfaction, blah, 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 persecution, and taken to court, etc. If the driver for some obscure reason decides to set their house on fire, I'm liable. It's tricky. You know, we're all a hobbyist as far as I know, except maybe Mr. Labs. You know,
Mr. Did you just call me Mr. Labs?
yes, I called you Mr. Labs. So, you know, doing them, I'm trying to I've got to get through 9 Model 4s, 3 Model 3s. I still need to get processed and sell my, you know, I do try to repair and find a home. Oh, I find a Model 4 is heading to Derby.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
There's somebody purchased a Model 4 and I said, are you sure you want to pay for the shipping? And yeah, he paid just as much for the shipping that he did for the computer. And
So I, you
Well,
know,
that's-
I've been in mass storage for more than 20 years, and that read write head is the most complicated part. The rest of it is simple. I mean, it really is.
so I'll be sending it's left last Thursday, so we'll see how it arrives. It was professionally packed and everything. I had to pay for the extra stuff, but we'll see what happens with that. So regarding floppy drives, is that it's not that I don't want to do them, it's just I have early on, like 5 years ago, remember I started on that and I suddenly stopped. I put a huge halt on doing any kind of real quote unquote servicing for anybody because I got burnt. You know, I repaired something as an honest guy, I did the repair, sent it back, and it became a 3-way conversation between his father and his son, and then it became a brouhaha of excuses and blah blah blah. And then they ship back the drive. They're not happy, and their drives were basically put in a piece of cardboard and mailed, and they arrived broken.
Yeah,
So
it's
now
the
I
same reason I stopped selling kits of my products, because you never
lie.
know if the person knows how to build the damn thing.
Or
You
people
just don't know.
or people just lie. I mean, I'm not talking to general hobbyists that we all know everybody here. And there's just people that want to do a thing on the fly. They come from, or they found in the state and they found this cool computer and they would like to get it repaired, but they expect a guy like me to be, you know, a brick and mortar store and I have $10 million in the background protecting me. I don't.
Yeah, that's
You know,
just not the way it
and
works.
big scary lawyers, right?
Yeah, you know, I charge
any of us have that.
I charge $25 for a full repair, and this is a drive that I had to fix the frame. I had to replace the frame, you know, and get it all done. And the guy the package had barely arrived, and he was calling me saying, "Hey, when is this going to be ready?" I said, "Well, hey, I have a job 8 to 5." You know,
I'm
that's
totally
like
I'm totally changing my name to Mr. Labs.
deep breath. So will I do it? I probably do it to people I know, like in the group. If there's requests for it, I will be honest about how and when I can deal with them. But I don't want to publicize it a whole lot, really, to be honest.
I want to
because-
turn it into a business, and that makes sense.
No, if I had, you know, if I had an LLC and protection, liability insurance, and if I was making money off of this, I don't know any about you, but you know, when I buy a computer, $200, I put the repairs, I put all the time and the energy, and it's all fixed, and I sell it $250, and people keep telling me like, why you're selling it so low? Well, I don't want it to sit on my shelf for 6 years because I want $400 for it. I am here to do the fun part, which is get it running, and get into the hands of somebody else can enjoy it.
Yeah,
I don't need 20 TRS-80s in my shop. I really don't.
Yeah, well,
Are you
Pete
listening,
Satinsky,
Pete?
Pete Satinsky apparently does.
I don't, but
No,
I somehow I do.
there's a difference between Pete and I. Pete is a conservator, so he makes sure that every machine that he has handed or been handed to is conserved. He makes sure he's got these 10D4s and 10D3s that I've never seen, and if I found one, I probably I'd probably hold on to it because they're
It's-
rare.
That's
You know,
absolute-
and it's not necessarily a collector's point of view. It's he is really doing this for saving it
He's-
for the
he's-
future.
The
As you-
Tandy
as you said,
Museum
he's a-
LLC.
he's a conservator. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
I'm
saving this
more
stuff.
I'm more the dweeb that likes to repair stuff.
I'm waiting for the day when Pete retires, gets his semi, and turns it into the TRS-80 traveling museum.
That's kind of
Semi.
a plan. Kind of a plan. Not a semi, but yeah.
I'm totally different. I just want one perfect example of each machine that I can test with. That's all I want.
I think, John, that Pete, when he backs up a semi to his house to do the traveling show of Tandy, that's probably after his wife served him for divorce.
Yeah, the semi
I
drivers are
hope
gonna
not. She'll probably be dancing a jig if he starts unloading all that stuff out of his house.
the semi drivers are gonna be like, what the fuck is this?
No, I have to bolt shelves to the side of the trailer. Sorry.
I need a 20 billion volt power converter. Can you install an extra 50 batteries in the back of your truck?
I'll have to buy my own semi. You know, I always wanted to be a truck driver when I was a kid. So
Where would you go?
Nowhere.
We're gonna have a convoy.
that was my favorite song.
I knew it.
Anyways, that's what I'm working on. If anybody is looking for parts, whatever, let me know. I've got a ton of stuff. I'm talking to Pascal, and he asked me if I had anything going on. I did find, I think Eric and I already talked about it sometimes back, about 6 months to a year back. I found a floppy disk controller, Holmes, HOLMES, Holmes.
Yeah, the homes, the
Enterprise, but it's most of the ones you find are the DX3s, which is the basic 5.25-inch floppy disk controller replacement. I've got the full plus card, which is the 5.25, the 8-inch. It has the switches on it for both, and has the real-time clock on it. It's complete. I've got every component on it. So he says, well, you should send it to me because I'd like to clone it. You know, Pascal has always wanted to clone. He wants to clone the world.
So you can actually speak to him in his native tongue, right?
We talk to each other in French all the time.
Yeah. So is he as rude in French as he is in English?
On a French standard, he is a classic Frenchman. Yes.
Okay.
I'm being polite here, but yeah, it's the problem with French people is that when they speak in English, they speak in the same tone as they would in French. And I had, as a French Canadian, I've had to learn this in the South. That doesn't work very well. People found me very aggravating, and I thought that Southerner was really annoying. So, you know, it goes both ways. Here's a favorite line that I have from work. Once a month, once a year, there's always a review for employees. And the last one my boss gave me was the following: you speak too fast for people in your region.
If it's any consolation, we also find you very aggravating.
So,
poor old Pascal. I mean, he puts a tremendous amount of work into, and hours
yeah.
must have
He does,
spent.
he
It's
does.
fantastic. He's working on stuff at the minute. Hopefully, he'll get something doing for the magazine. But that guy must be spending hours and countless hours working. It's fantastic.
Everybody does their part.
Yeah, well,
so likely I'm gonna, when he's got, because I know he's working on a vid-80 board that I think Eric sent him. You're muted.
You're flipped up, Eric. We can't hear you.
I
There
guess
you
the
Yeah,
cat.
bring the mic to
Yeah.
Hitman.
Yeah, he's got the vid-80 plus card I sent him, and he's going to try to clone it and figure out how to get it working since we have no docs on it. And, you know, that's to turn your Model 3 into a Model 4 with, what was
1
it?
meg of RAM
1 meg of RAM and 80 column and all
and
that.
capable of supporting CPM supposedly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not, there's 2 vid-80 boards out there by 2 different companies.
Yeah.
So
So I think
yeah,
AeroComp
that's-
resold the homes.
Oh, is that what it
But-
was? Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it was originally Holmes had the VADA-80 and the VADA-80 Plus, and then Aerocomp started reselling a lot of things from other people. But
No, well,
you
that's
know,
that's what happened a lot when they start companies start closing. They got bought out by everybody else.
yeah.
Cool.
So
Hey.
that's it for me.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, Metcalf, you're awake.
Quiet, Mr. Labs. uh, not a whole lot to report from me other than lots of hardware failures the past month. My Fred has decided to not play nice with my Model 1's expansion interface any longer. However, it works fine with a Quinterface. No idea why.
Yeah, well, you bought it from the wrong place.
I bought it from you.
Well, you bought a Fred from Bartlett Labs? No.
Well, it was an
No,
eBay.
not likely.
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt, but I have yet to find a TRS-80 aficionado who doesn't have an excellent sense of humor.
Well, you have to with these things. It's almost like working on an old British car, and I know my way around a few of those, unfortunately.
Yeah. Right.
It's like sort of like karma. The days of when it likes you, it works, and the days when it doesn't work.
Well, lately, the past month, not so much. I've been trying to get a couple of Percom floppy drives working for an Atari 8-bit that I have, and had the brilliant idea to try to align them by plugging them into the Model 1 and using Floppy Doctor to seek the heads and do all that, because there's no similar program for the Atari 8-bit to do such a thing, at least with the aftermarket drives. So speaking of floppy drives, I've got 6 for the Model 1, and only 2.5 of them decided to work correctly. And my 2 best ones that were working when I put them away in storage, now no longer work. So it's
How's your Mies doing?
yeah, I think I may be looking at investing in something like that. Maybe a Meyer if you get those back up into production again. But
I thought we had seen the last of the Myers.
The DigiKey is telling me that the one part that I need should be back in stock on May 15th. I don't really believe it, because it's been out of it's been out of stock for over a year.
He's just hoping he can enjoy the next wave of punishment from having to make all of those.
You're
Shut
not
it
far off there.
Just say I no longer can produce it, shut it down, and that's it. But you know you can't.
People like it. I'm going to keep making it, even though it's punishment.
make a new version of the the M1.
Yeah, combine all of it into one thing. Maybe.
Fantastic. You would sell hundreds of it.
I've already sold hundreds of them.
He's got to finish his Coco adapter first.
It's right over here. I've shown it to you before. It works.
That's 5 years going now.
At least.
You'll get there. All right.
Come on, Pete. It's development.
Mr. Labs will come through.
It's
all right. So we want to leave some time for people to show up their games. So who's got one of their favorite TRS-80 games they want to show and play and show how skilled you are at it?
well, I'd love to, but my hardware's not working. So
I hate it when my hardware doesn't work.
Yeah.
They make
And
a pill-
that's the
pill for
most
that.
popular TRS-80 game, fixing
what-
hardware. You know.
Well, I'll go and show robots if nobody else wants to.
Robot attack?
No, this is a
No,
Xenix.
no, this is a Xenix game. Hang on.
Xenix games are graphically challenged.
Yes, yes, they are. Yeah, I know people can see my screen.
Yeah, Xenix boot. Dust boot. That's way too many copyrights.
Well, you know, candy, blah blah blah.
Okay, so was this a released game, just a shareware kind of thing? Or?
I want to say it was a game we downloaded off Usenet. I honestly don't remember. But it's one of my favorites. It's kind of one of those games that's just really fun to. I mean, it's a mindless game. It's some versions of it. Let's see.
You've got mail.
I don't need more.
And hey, look, it's Kernel 3.4.
Yep.
Yeah.
All righty. So let's see. So the idea is every move that you make, you use the VI keys to move around. The robots always move one step towards you, and you don't want to you don't want to let them touch you because you'll die and the game will be over. Down here is the number of free teleports that you get. So you hit T and you teleport to an open space on the screen where there's guaranteed to be no robots. So the way you win is you get the robots to crash into each other. If you see the @ sign over here, I don't know, can you guys see my cursor?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. That means the robots crashed into each other and created a junk heap. Now, when you get later on in the game, let me see if I can get to a spot where what you want to do is get the robots to crash into each other.
I thought
And
Model
then-
1 graphics sucked.
Well, yeah, ASCII, right?
You're screwed.
No, well, I can teleport, but it's random, right? The deal is here, you want, if you get all the robots to crash into each other, which is about to happen, you win the level and you get to go on to the next level.
Cool.
Now you're really screwed.
Oh, it gets, yeah, every level, there's more robots that are after you. So,
I actually still play a version of this from the BSD games.
there was a version where you're the doctor and the Daleks are after you. And in that version, and I haven't found the source to this one yet, but we had it on the backs.
Yeah, but this is please continue. This is going so well.
You could okay, so here I'm gonna just stay put because now I have scrap heaps to hide behind.
Mm.
And I can now hit S, which means just stay here and run until all the robots are dead.
Okay.
So they're not very intelligent robots. They'll run right into
No,
the
they just all they know how to do is move one step towards you each turn.
Hmm.
In the Doctor Who version, you have a sonic screwdriver, and
Sonic screwdriver.
yeah, you have one shot, I think, per level where you can weld two robots,
cool.
next to each other. As
Sonic screwdriver, a good name for a band.
Why not? anyway, so this one is the traditional robots.
Very cool.
And now we take out the robots onto level 4, and you can see it gets more and more crowded, and eventually you get to the point where you can like barely make one move, like what just happened here.
So is this written in C? You know?
Yeah, C in cursives.
Yeah, the cool thing isn't so much the game as the operating system.
Right, that you can play this on that operating system.
Yeah.
Oh, I almost died there.
Famous last words.
Well, it's hard. On the higher levels, it's actually better if you manage to go a level and not use your teleport. It saves it into the next level, and so you get the level for your teleport +1, and you start getting bonuses for not using your teleport, and they pile up. But it's hard to do. So
Yeah, it looks like a really cool game, but hard to do.
It's a simple game, which is why I was saying it's a fun game if you just kind of want. Oh, there we go. I teleported, a non-free teleport, and I landed right on a robot. So, bam,
I'm sure he took offense.
Oh, he extreme prejudice, yes. So you can see I didn't beat my high score. Anyway, that's robots.
It's a great geek.
Steve, chicken
It's
down.
a fun-
Does that really say chicken down on level 1?
Yeah, I don't know that when you install it, it always has that on there. If you just quit the game, that's what it'll say. Anyway,
I always wondered back in the day, did somebody look at this and say, hey, Robotron 2084, and developed that video game based on this, adding more robots that moved rapidly and stuff.
I don't know. That's interesting. That would be interesting to find out.
It's a good geeks game because it seems like you need to have really solid grasp of geometry and some trigonometry to excel at it. So
And suddenly
that was
suddenly
actually one of my very first favorite games was playing Star Trek in BASIC, because one of the things that it let you do was either give an ordinal direction to fire your torpedoes, or you could give it a compass heading, which meant that was the very first applied trigonometry that I ever found a practical use for. Because if you could calculate the exact angle to shoot the torpedo, you could nail them every time. They didn't have to be lined up in one of the ordinal directions, right?
Yep.
It's like
Cool.
very first applied trigonometry. So, killing the Klingons every time.
Who else has a game?
Well, I said mention of Star Trek is good because the one I wanted to play is Time Trek,
All right.
which is the. Let's see here, I just gotta share my window. There we go. Start share.
it is.
It's what's amazing about Time Trek is that it actually is only a 4K game. It'll run on a 4K Model 1, like a level 1. So there we go. Let's get the window out of the way. So it's like the ordinary sort of Star Trek game, except it's real time. So you can't just sit there and wait, and the Klingons are going to wait for to do your turn. You have to be ready to take action before they get you first. So level 1 is the easiest. So we're going to start with that.
Unpolite Klingons.
Yeah, no patience, no mercy.
None of this turn-taking stuff. We're coming for you.
So this one, there's 8 Klingon ships, 6 Federation star bases. So you can use your arrow keys to move around, and you got to watch out for those little slightly bright dots there because those are stars, and if you run into them, boom,
Blow up.
you're burned to a crisp. Okay, so let's play again. 7 Klingons, 10 Federation star bases.
You've totally got this.
So there's nobody here in this quadrant. So what we can do is we can press 3, look at the long range scan, and it shows us where the star bases are. If there isn't a star base, we can only see sort of quadrants nearby. So you see that E there at 5-4, which is the Enterprise.
What's M?
M is magnetic storm. It means you can't tell what's there. So what we can do is we can go to, so if we press 2 and then go 4-1, we'll go to quadrant 4-1. There's a star base. Now we don't need to, but you can dock with a star base and it'll repair you, recharge photon torpedoes. You press 1 to look at your status. We got 7 Klingons left, still 10 star bases. Everything's no damage, so it's good. So the nice part is too is that it when you press the key like 3 to look at a long range scan, you can just press 3 to go back. So you can just really move quickly back and forth, right? Take a look. There we go. So if we go to Starbase, so we type 2, go to Starbase. Whoops, we've got an SOS at Starbase 3-5. So let's go there. And there's a Klingon. Get a photon torpedo. Whoa! You destroyed the Starbase. That's going to hurt my score. Oh well.
Weak shields.
Yeah, your shields. Now
That seems weird that a starbase has weak shields.
That's what I mean, you know?
Yeah.
Didn't we
Didn't
just
mean
see
to.
Starbase 1 defend all of Earth?
That's new Trek. Okay, so we need a dock at the starbase here, and we can see the engine, everything getting repaired. Photon torpedoes are back up to 3.
Oh, interesting. It repairs over time.
Yep, everything's happening in real time.
Well, what I mean is it wasn't insta repair, right? You
Oh
had
yeah.
to sit there and wait for it to.
Oops, now we got a SOS at Starbase 4-1. Okay. So the easy thing to do is to maneuver around and just press and fire your phasers at 0 degrees, right? But you can fire your phasers at any angle you want, 270 or 333. Oh, 207. Okay,
this game is being played at George Phillips speed, not TRS-80 Model 1 speed.
Why aren't you firing torpedoes?
I did fire 1 there.
You only have 3 is part of the problem until you dock again.
Yeah, then you have to reload. Fly around here till we can find them. 261. How about now? Nope. 263. Whoops. Dang it. Now there we go. 1 Klingon at 273. There we go. Save the galaxy.
Well, the Federation anyway.
That's right. Too bad for the Klingons. So there's cute parts to the game too. It is possible that it'll tell you there's a black hole in the quadrant, which is a star which you can't see. So you have to be very careful there. The other thing you can do is it 4? You can put 0 energy to your shields, and so what that means is that 1 hit will definitely kill you. But on the other hand, when you go to fire your phasers, it'll say the phasers are 100%. So your phasers will be much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So when we play this game, for the thousands of hours we did as kids, the one thing you do is say, I'm going to try it on level 7 with 0% shield and see if I can win, challenge yourself. And like all Star Trek games, it also has a self-destruct. So if you press 7 and type in the secret password 123.
Sounds like a great idea.
But the nice part of it is that if you self-destruct and there's a 1 Klingon left and he's in the quadrant with you, he gets destroyed. So you can actually win the game that way.
Yeah, well, you kind of have a problem at that point.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I say the amazing thing is that it's all written in 4K. So if you ever want to get out your disassembler and look at how Time Trek is constructed, you will be most impressed, I guarantee it.
That is amazing.
Yep, that's cool.
Combination of action with a Star Trek game. I've never played this one, but I mean, I played so many Star Trek games in my life. Every time I got a new computer, the first thing I would do was write a Star Trek game for it. Whether it was my Amiga, my Atari, my IBM PC. That was the first thing I did. Just can't count how many hours I spent playing that game.
And what you really want for this game is a numeric keypad, because except for the arrow keys, everything is all just typing numbers and entering. So it's a real use for the numeric keypad, which probably had other uses, but I can't think of what they are.
Very cool.
But don't forget the 2-2 quadrant thing. One of
Oh,
the
that's right.
players, pointed out that the first thing you want to do is to clear quadrant 2-2. So if you panic, 2 brings up warp drive. So it means if 2-2 is clear, then you just hammer on 2 and you're saved. 2-2-2-2.
What is it? The Karen Valentine strategy? Room 222.
Not heard of that in a long time.
There's a name I've not heard in a long, long time.
Long time. All right. Thank you, George, for sharing that one. Anybody else have one they want to share?
Can I just do a free plug? I know it's perhaps not the most popular sort, but One-Liner Games. We've got a separate publication which I update annually for all the One-Liner games available. Well, many games available for the Model 1. It's downloaded. They're on disk. All you need to do is actually load it in and it will run. You don't need any typing or anything like that. But the best one, I think, is one called Snail Run. It's one line and it's really addictive. It's just a race. Snails run across there and it randomizes a winner. If you want a little bit of fun, I just found that fantastic. It's addictive. I used to play it with my grandkids for like chocolate beans. We call them Smarties in the UK. And Grandad won a lot of Smarties. Sign of a misspent youth, I think.
All from one line of code.
One line of code. Yeah. Oh, basic, a level 2 basic code. Yeah.
Amazing.
Did you really just say Limey Games?
Sorry, missed it.
Did you really just say Limey Games?
One line.
One line. They're all produced in Limey Land, definitely.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. We're in coronation mode at the moment, man. Everything's just great,
Yeah, we Americans don't really understand the coronation thing, but we're trying to.
Is the Empire returning?
I hope not.
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, well, we had everybody. We had the Mounties from Canada and the Gurkhas from, and it was quite a superb day. It really was. Yeah. But poor old Charles, I feel sorry for him because he's the same age as me. I'm retired and he's just starting work.
It's his first job.
He's been waiting 70 years to do it.
I know.
First day on the job.
I watched that crowning, and when they put the crown on his head, you know that saying about the weight of the crown on your head, you could actually see it.
Yeah, it's over 3 kilos. It's solid gold.
Yeah, it's not a feather, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, when I'm king, which my mom always said I would be, this crap is going to stop.
You're king of the Model 1 accessories. How about that?
Yeah,
You could take that.
I guess I'll live with that.
King Labs.
All right. Anybody else have a game?
Am I really known as Labs?
I've got a
You are now.
one, but
That's his new nickname.
Malcolm totally made that up.
I've got a quick one here I can show.
Yeah.
Not really my favorite, but Okay, let me see if I can fire it up. This came up because the author contacted me and he might have the source. I'd never seen the game before. He calls it Rockin' Robber. It's a little bit obscure.
I've seen it.
Okay. Yeah,
128 by 48, baby.
It's a great game. I like this game.
yeah, it uses the Model 3 graphics a bit. I'm not sure what the story is, but you have to get the little clubs.
Yep. You have to break through the base of it.
Yeah, and they're firing some kind of like Greek letter here.
So what's happening to the missiles when they pass that bar? Are they damaging that?
It's moving the boxes inside the
Yeah.
creature. It's like a tentacle creature.
Yeah, it seems to be squirming.
And are you reloading there when you go to the left?
That's the I guess once you break these things, then you can steal the stuff from the container.
Yeah, I can see the Model 3 graphics with the little spade character.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like you're having any impact on that being up top. Shoot it.
No,
Well, what he's trying to do is to hit the spades that show up inside of the creature. He's not trying to kill the creature, not right
You
away.
mean the clubs?
Whatever.
yeah.
And then when he hits, I think it's 5. Every time you hit 5 of them, the door on the left opens and he can go and steal one of the jewels.
Gotcha.
Of course, you've got the things falling left and right.
Oh, and you bring
Anyways,
these
there's a second level, but I haven't got past it. Anyways, the cute thing is that yeah, the author just kind of rediscovered this game. He thought it was long gone. There's a site, willis.com, which has a huge archive, and he managed to find them. So maybe you can dig up the source code. But he still runs a computer store in Florida now.
Wow.
The Programming Force was his original name. Let's see, give me 1 minute, maybe I can get to the second level.
It's a cool concept.
Yeah, it's a timed event too, isn't it?
His ship looks like
Yeah, I guess I'm losing.
It just starts firing a lot more at you after a while.
his ship looks like a piece of crap.
Yeah,
It's just a gun.
there we go.
One more.
Let's cut the smiley face on the ship. Yeah.
He's firing snakes.
Oh, that makes sense.
And you notice that it's the creature on the top is smaller now. There's a lot less tentacles dangling down.
How do you win this thing?
Wait, he's going to show you.
Very carefully.
There you
Collect
go.
all of those
You
treasures.
collect all of those diamonds, if you want to call them that.
Oh, a lot of action here. Okay, there we go.
He just did level 1. There you go.
That's to go. And then I don't know how to do the second level. I'm not sure the objective.
This looks somewhat different.
Yeah.
It is. Each section are different.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't know this part.
Huh.
I never got that far.
Anyways, kind of a lost game.
Written in BASIC?
No, this one's machine code. He had a few basic games.
Does it- yeah.
It looks like it's probably a pretty cool game if you can figure out how the hell to play it.
Yeah, well, this probably is pretty much 90% of the games of this era. I recently played, there's a color computer game, Donna Buona. Oh, did I clear the level?
He's still playing.
Could be playing all night.
Donna Buona, that I realized I'd totally forgotten how to play. I didn't know how to get past the first level until George told me. It's like, you're supposed to pick up the map pieces.
But you thought they were just little dots in the water for no reason. Are they rapids? No, they're map pieces.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what do you expect from a game named Donna Blana?
I won't play, but my favorite game on the TRS-80 was Jungle Boy.
I remember that one.
it was probably the hardest game to play with such low graphics, with the big vines swinging.
Mm.
It was the timing was just horrible to happen because the system was already doing the graphic and you had to hit the space bar at the right time and your character had to move out of the way.
Yeah,
It
well,
was,
mine
it
were
was
always
fun.
the Infocom games, which, you know, it's not really a time limit.
No, that's true. Another cool one that wasn't terribly popular was Moon Rover. I don't know if anybody
Oh,
ever
but that
seen
one
that.
was fun.
But that it was a simple game. It actually was
Yeah.
a copy from a big arcade game. Basically, you're driving a moon rover and there's holes and stuff. You gotta jump. You just have to jump. That's the whole basis of the game. Jump and fire. And it was a fun game, but it wasn't very
What?
terribly popular.
I'd forgotten about that game.
It's a good game. I still have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one I always liked was Assault. You know, that one, you know, you're going all on the screen and things are chasing you and it can get really intense at times.
Yeah, the big five games are always great. You know, Galaxy Invasion Plus was wonderful.
Robot.
You know, what you can do with 128 by 48 graphics is amazing.
Well, yeah, and the sounds, and yeah, my favorite games were Attack Force and Robot Attack from Big Five.
Heck yeah.
So responsive and such great sound effects, and like you said, the graphics were amazing considering how limited the rendering capabilities were.
The one I liked the best for that, I was very impressed for games, was the voice one. That when you didn't have a voice box or anything, was Panic Attack. When they start using it starts at the beginning and it goes Panic Attack. You're like, oh my god, it's talking. And during the game it'll say player 1, player 2. You know, it was the early sound bits, but it actually, like you said, it really made like, wow, how much can you pull out with 64K for a game? It's just very impressive.
Yeah, Big Five did a lot of that, and it was, you know, the cassette port, for crying out loud. How do you get sound, you know, voice out of the cassette port? But they did it somehow.
They're the standard.
Well, you
Standard.
know, the guys had to learn how to properly program to save every little bit, because every little bit counted back then.
You know,
know.
Roundup 2 needs voice.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
Bill Hope was interviewed, I'm sorry, Peter, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, how about that game Roundup? Yeah.
I actually sent
It needs cow noises. Come on,
Nice.
come on, man.
Mm.
You mean the one with the cats?
All right, guys, we're at 2 hours, so we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks.
Oh, Peter, I had a quick a game that I wanted to show. Do we have a minute?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Yeah, this is an oldie. It's from 1979. It's called Barricade from Small System Software. The same guys that wrote the RSM2D, right? The legendary original powerful monitor that had the disassembly capability. And it was written just for the Model 1, of course. There was no Model 3 at that time. And it was written to be run on either a level 1 or a level 2 4K. Let me see if I can show it here. Okay. Are we seeing Barricade?
No. Sure.
Oh,
There
There
it
it
is.
is.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay. I think this is one of the earliest, you know, real live action games that was, you know, created for the TRS-80 in machine language. So I'm not necessarily great at playing it, but just show you the action. Of course, you know, there's no sound. This is before Big Five started doing their thing. Let me see.
Angle, paddle, speed.
And I've got it running slow with a large paddle on purpose, just so I don't die right away. You can see it's a breakout game. Obviously, it is primitive compared to Pete's Breakout, but you know, this game is more of a I think has more, you know, just it's historically significant because of how early it was written. And you know, just imagine this running on a 4K level 1 machine back in 1979.
Breakout games were always fun.
Okay, and as you play it, the angle gets steeper and the speed increases. And I won't play the whole thing through because I know people were already at over 2 hours, but I just wanted to just kind of I don't know if anybody even remembers ever seeing this game. I think it's kind of lost.
Mhm. I need to add a bigger pedal to break down.
Yeah, well, on this one, I mean, you can adjust the paddle size, you can adjust the speed.
Yeah.
For difficulty, you can adjust the max angle that you want.
The
And
more modern ones, there were power-ups that would come at you that would lengthen your paddles or slow down the ball and stuff like that.
What you can adjust is the player skill.
well, yeah, that would depend on the player themselves. But okay, well, I'm sure we've seen enough, right?
Very cool. Thank you for sharing, Blair.
Of course,
Yeah.
sure.
That was cool.
Nice.
All right, guys. We'll do this again next month. All right.
All right.
Thanks, Peter.
Yep.
Thanks,
take care.
Pete.
Bye.